I'm going to explain the 3 types of trauma and the 4th often hidden type of trauma. And if you've experienced any of these, I'm going to share the most important thing for you to know. So the first type of trauma is acute trauma. This is your typical capital T trauma. This is what most people think about when they actually think or refer to trauma. For example, this would be a one-time assault. This would be a serious car accident. Or this would be a sudden loss of a parent. This is going to be something that happens to your nervous system that is such a shock that it leaves an imprint. The experience itself was so much to process that it pushed your body's and your nervous system's capacity beyond what it was comfortable with, and it left an impact on the body. The second type of trauma is chronic trauma. So chronic trauma is similar to a chronic illness. This generally happens over time. So whereas acute trauma is a one-time incident, chronic trauma is something that happens over time. Now, this could be you're being bullied over months or years. It could be that there's neglect at home over months or years. And the neglect can be sometimes very obvious. Other times it can be much more nuanced and subtle, kind of a death by 1,000 paper cuts, if you will. And lots of people have experienced chronic trauma, but yet they don't realize it because it can feel so normal. It can be so normalized, almost like a fish that's swimming in its own water. It can be hard to see. So chronic trauma can be sometimes very obvious, but other times it can be really subtle. The key distinguishing difference here is that it's traumatic experience over time. So the third type is complex trauma. This is 2 or more events happening at the same time. This is essentially when 2 things happen. It's an overwhelming experience for the nervous system, as you can imagine. For example, there is neglect happening at home, and then at school, on the way back from school, there is a one-time assault. Now, you start to pair these things together and they begin to compound. So complex trauma is 2 or more events that create a compounding effect. The 4th type is often missed and is often hidden, and this is actually witnessing trauma. It's also known as vicarious trauma. And essentially what happens here is through the witnessing of, say, a parent's abuse, or you've witnessed a serious car accident in person, through that experience, the same areas of the brain have been shown to light up through neuroception, through kind of co-regulation with others, that actually create a traumatic effect on the system of the person witnessing the trauma itself. So there have been multiple different studies done on this, and as you can imagine, if you're a young child and you're witnessing the abuse of your mother or your father, that's going to land and have impact on the system. This is kind of our natural empathetic capacities as human beings. For some individuals, witnessing trauma of others can have a profound psychological and emotional impact on the system itself. The 4 types of trauma are acute, chronic, complex, and witnessing vicarious trauma. Now, as you can imagine, nearly every single person on this planet has experienced 1 or more of these types of trauma. So if you've experienced any of these yourselves, the most important thing to know is that it isn't what's happened to you, it's how what has happened to you is held. Now, this is really important because what it means is that, yes, we might not have had our trauma or experience held and processed in a way that was supportive to move the trauma or the energy out of our nervous systems as children or as young adults or as adults. But actually, the unique opportunity here is that we can ourselves, and with support, have those experiences held and released from the body, because it's not trapped and held in time. It's in the body. Trauma is held inside the body. And when that can be released, when the same neural networks of where that response lives in your body and in your brain can be activated, and then paired with a new response of being held with compassion, with love, with strength, with care, then that can be resolved. So it didn't matter if it happened to you at age 3, 5, 10, or 15. If you can learn the skills to be able to hold your trauma now, you can reconcile and release whatever it is that has happened. That's the unique opportunity that we all have here. Essentially, what we have to do is we have to take the parts of us that we're feeling dysregulated in our nervous system, whether that be that's been creating stress and anxiety in your life, or whether that's been creating a kind of shutdown response. Both of these responses are completely normal, but what they're looking for is how to be brought back to connection, back to love, back to strength, which is often what we really wanted from our caregivers or the people around us that we didn't get. So learning how to kind of re-regulate and give this back to ourselves is key. There are 3 key systems that are essential to know if you're wanting to learn how to do this yourself. You can learn about these here in the next video.